1203, standing at her front door. And Katie's
The Schilling Show continues here into our final segment of the day, and very pleased to welcome to this program. You know the name Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is an attorney, an environmental advocate, and so much more, independent candidate for president. And coming tonight to Charlottesville to a fundraising event, we'll give you details. Bobby Kennedy, welcome to the Schilling Show, and thank you for joining us today. It's very exciting to have you here.
Hey, Rob, thanks for having me.
I just want to tell people quickly, if they want to get information on the fundraiser tonight, it's kennedy24.com/Charlottesville, and that'll take you right where you need to go, and I think there's still availability. Tell us why you jumped into this. There's a lot of things you could be doing with your life other than running for president. Why is this important?
You know, I saw, particularly during COVID, I saw this mismanagement coming from both the Republican and Democratic parties. We shut down 3.3 million businesses and shifted $4 trillion in wealth upwards to this kind of new oligarchy of billionaires. During the 500 days of the COVID lockdowns, we created a new billionaire every day, 500 new billionaires. And it was the final coup de grace for the American middle class, which is now beleaguered and angry and feels like the whole game is rigged against them. And it was part of this long evolution that I watched from the front row of the capture of our government by this corrupt merger of state and corporate power that happens within the agencies, which I happen to spend a lot of time litigating against. I've sued most of the big federal agencies and the corporate polluters and the pharmaceutical industries that they've become sock puppets for. And I saw that the corporations that are benefiting from this arrangement, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, the companies that own, those three companies own 89% of the S&P 500. They're now targeting our single-family homes, our farmland, and we're moving into a different kind of society. We're away from an ownership society to a rental society. It's a colonial model. It's a aristocratic model. And both political parties are now financed by these groups, by these, that are orchestrating this transformation of America from the world's exemplary democracy into a corporate kleptocracy. And I saw that nobody within those political parties was able to even talk about these issues, talk about what's happening to our young people in this country, about the chronic disease epidemic that afflicts our country more than any other country in the world. Why are our kids? When I was a kid, my uncle was president. 6% of American kids had chronic disease. Today it's 60%. Wow. And, I'm about to go speak at the University of Virginia, which I attended as a law student. And 60% of those kids are going to have autoimmune diseases. They're going to have obesity. They're going to have neurological diseases. They're going to have food allergies. And when I was a kid, that stuff was unknown. Why is nobody asking what's happening to our kids? Why have autism levels gone from 1 in 10,000 in my generation today, 70-year-old men, and in my kids' generation, according to the CDC, it's 1 in every 34. So why are our children sick? Why can they not buy houses? Housing prices are now out of reach, and that was the central fulcrum of the American dream, that if you worked hard, you played by the rules. You could finance a home, you could raise a family, you could take a summer vacation, you could have a retirement, pay for your retirement on one job. And there's nobody in that, my kids' generation. I have 7 kids, and 6 of them are between 20 and 30. None of them believe that promise applies to them. And, I ran really because of that generation, because I want them to have the same hope in our country that I did, the same pride in our country, and the same hope for their own future.
We're talking with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., independent candidate for President of the United States, online at kennedy24.com. I wanted to ask you, because you, unlike others, are willing to challenge the establishment in a way that others are not willing to do, and what you just said in your opening remarks proves that. But they tend to, and I say they, I mean the deep state, they tend to go after people like you and try to suppress you. So do you have concerns about the deep state? And if elected to president, what would you do to avoid getting squashed?
Well, I'm in a unique position because I've spent 40 years litigating against these agencies, so I know how to unravel corporate capture. And I've spent a lifetime thinking about it, really. But I've sued the NIH, the CDC, FDA. I've probably sued the EPA more than any other attorney. I've sued the Department of Agriculture. I've sued the FCC, Federal Communications Commission. I argued a case a couple of months ago about, and I got a decision from the Federal Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C., forcing FCC to go back and re-look at the regulations. I'm lying to the public about the dangers of cell phone radiation. So, and when I'm representing 1,000 families in Columbiana County in East Palestine, Ohio now, whose lives were upended by the Norfolk Southern spill that happened because of agency capture of the Department of Transportation that did favors for the railroad that led to that crash. So, I know how to unravel it. And, I know, the CIA is a captive agency. It is captured by the military-industrial complex, by Raytheon, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and Lockheed. And my father had a plan for separating the functions of the agency to reverse that agency capture. Most of the people who work for that agency, the 20,000 people who work for that agency, are patriotic Americans and good public servants. But the upper echelons have been captured by the military-industrial complex, and their function is to provide their clientele with this constant pipeline of new wars, and that needs to be unraveled. The Fed is a captured agency. It is captured by the big bankers on Wall Street. And, it functions to shift wealth upward by shifting quantitative easing with high interest rates, which cause bankruptcy and BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard come in and snatch up that equity. And so I feel like I am really in a unique position to do something about this. President Trump wanted to drain the swamp, and I think he earnestly intended to, but he did not. He was not able to deal with the big agencies. He got rolled over by his public health agencies. He brought John Bolton in to run the NSA, who's the essence of a swamp creature, who is the face of the military-industrial complex. He brought Scott Gottlieb, Pfizer's business partner, in to run FDA, and Gottlieb did an $88 billion favor for his company, and then went back to serve on the board and collect his payoff. And if you look at each one of those agencies, President Trump did the same thing with every one of them. He brought an insider from industry who turned the agencies over to the enterprise of advancing the mercantile interests of those companies rather than protecting public health and protecting the public interest. And I know how to change that.
Robert F. Kennedy, we've got about a minute left, and I think a lot of people are looking very seriously at your candidacy, but the big question they have is, what is the path to victory, and how do you get ballot access? So if you could fit that in about a minute and a half, we'd be in good shape.
Yeah, we will have ballot access in every state. We got it in a single day. For this week, we were required 3,000 signatures in New Hampshire. We got 5,000. We're going to be able to do that across the country. I'm already beating President Trump and President Biden among all Americans under 45 years old in the battleground states. And nationally in all Americans under 35 and trouncing them also among independent voters, which is now the largest political party. So, those are bellwether groups. We're getting more and more opportunity to go on to the mainstream media and do interviews. And the one group I'm weak with are baby boomers, and they're the ones that should be most for me because they remember Camelot and, my family. But they get their news from mainstream media, so which of course is filled with defamations about me. So they have a low opinion of me now. But what we find is we have a high conversion rate when people actually see me speak, and that's beginning to happen.
We are just about out of time, but I will advise people that you're coming to Charlottesville tonight for a fundraiser. Kennedy24.com/Charlottesville for information. I will be there, and I look forward to meeting you in person. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., thank you for stepping up, and thank you for joining us today on The Schilling Show. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you very, very much.